listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collins, and Kevin, Mr. Kevin Durso, how are you? How about them Phillies, buddy?
How about them Phillies? Yeah. We're still wallowing in it a little bit.
Yep.
It's Sunday morning. It all ended at about 11:30 last night, officially. I mean, if you were paying for everybody, it ended at a different time. I'm sure whether it was the home run last night or the no-hitter in Game 4 or in between. But that was, well, you know what? If nothing else, the way that we talked about the Flyers last time we did a show, which was right after the Phillies won the first round that they were in, which was a brand new round in the playoffs anyway. It's kind of crazy to think that we are nearly a month out from that point.
And by the way,
just now getting to the part where the Flyers are going to become more relevant in terms of being one of the only things on, as opposed to hiding behind playing while the Eagles are on, or playing while the Phillies are on, or, you know, or playing behind multiple sporting events. Like, it's been a long time since we've been able to talk about in October where the Phillies are in the playoffs, the Eagles are playing well, and you have two other teams in the city getting their season started. You know, also can't dismiss the Union making the MLS Cup either.
Also losing in the championship.
You had three teams play, two teams making a championship, one playing at a level that championship has to be a thought, or long playoff run has to be.
Oh yeah, and all the while the Eagles are 8-0 and looking like they're gonna make a long run themselves. It's an exciting time to be in Philadelphia. You can't deny
that, and we talked about that before because of the fact, I remember, and we'll get into this more when we get into the Flyers stuff specifically. But
we do have a lot of Flyers talk. We just have some other stuff off the top here,
right? Because we started with this,
right?
Which was incredible in and of its own, but we had talked about this on a previous show going into the Flyers season, where it was like, listen, the Flyers are flying behind everybody.
Yep.
Like, even the Union are doing things that, it's going to draw attention. The Sixers are getting started with expectations.
Yep.
Which, ironically enough, the Sixers are the team that have kind of been the most disappointing.
They love this hype the most because they've just kind of been struggling and flying under the radar, and they're not under nearly the magnifying glass they would be without this playoff run.
Right. So, it's interesting. I mean, I think the Flyers are feeling that too, for sure, because it's listen, you don't have to be it makes it makes the attendance make sense. It makes probably the ratings, which I don't know the exact ratings. I don't know what the ratings were last year when they were really awful in the middle of long losing streaks, but I'm sure it makes more sense when it's you know what? Okay, perfect example. Saturday night. Game 6 of the World Series is on. The Union had just played in the MLS Cup. Who was paying attention to the Flyers at 7 o'clock? Realistically, who was paying attention to the Flyers at 7 o'clock? If not for, the way that I looked at it?
I watched the first hour just watching the Flyers.
There was...
For Claude Giroux. Claude Giroux was the main story on Saturday
Well, let's
night.
Put it this way, okay? If I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to recall every single time this happened, but there was at least... Actually, in the last 2 weeks... The Flyers played on a Tuesday and Wednesday, both in Florida, Tampa and Florida, in the middle of games being on.
Yep.
It's Phillies playoff games. They played a game against Nashville on a Saturday in the middle of a Phillies playoff game. They played a game against Carolina during a Phillies World Series game. They played games against the Rangers in Toronto during World Series games. And then they played a game against Ottawa during World Series games. That is a total of... That's at least, 6, 7 of their 11 that they've played, right. Where quite literally you were able to turn around and say, oh, yeah, by the way, after the first hour, I know you've tuned out, so thank you for following if you didn't, for your score updates, because,
But you know
the guys at 97.3 went on, because Thursday night was an off day this past week, which was, it wasn't supposed to be a Phillies game. It was supposed to be the travel day for the Phillies World Series, and it was going to be, and the Eagles were playing in Houston, ironically. So it was supposed to be the Eagles could get your attention, nobody else was playing, and then the Phillies were off. And instead it turned into...
And then the Monday rainout happened.
Right, and then it turned into the Phillies and the Eagles are playing at the same time, which prompted...
I would love to see those numbers for that Amazon Eagles game.
Better than you think.
Really?
Well... Okay, so two things, and not to be surprising, but Philly killed Houston in the football ratings this week by a ton. Like, it wasn't even close. World Series ratings, different story. Like, both got, I think in Philly it was a 50 share, and in Houston it was a 55 share, which is crazy numbers.
That's insane. Yeah.
But football still got, like, I think a 10 share in Philly, and it got like a 3 in Houston.
There were a lot of people double screening it on Thursday.
Oh, hello, right here. Thank you very much. Which presents
I was triple screening it last night. I was watching the Flyers, I was watching the Phillies, and I was watching the UFC fights.
Okay,
we had all three going. I brought the TV out from the bedroom, watching on my phone.
But like, so when both of those games are on, like, you're watching at the same time. Both teams are good. You're trying to pick something, and it is like, it's a different story, kind of. Given where the Flyers are, A, in their season, and B, kind of expectation-wise, as we talked about, it was one of those things where it was like, I literally wanted to make the joke, okay, thanks for tuning in for the first hour. I know you've tuned out. Bye.
You can leave now, say yeah.
But, okay, so the conversation on the radio, this is where I was going. The conversation on the radio station was, what's your setup? I send them a picture because we literally moved, like, my wife wanted me to, move the living room TV into the family room, put them both on. One, like, think about it. They put the football game that's supposed to be the Amazon Prime game on regular television. I didn't even go that direction. Like, we still put Prime on.
Oh, I didn't even realize they put it on regular TV.
They did. Locally, I think locally it's contractually obligated, but
fair. The ESPN, the NHL has no such contracts, as you'll find in every comment section every time they announce a Hulu exclusive game.
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyway,
I send them a picture of the setup, and like, the guys, like, really quickly on this is during Thursday show leading up to the Thursday night games. Like, they sit there and they go, yeah, by the way, like, he was covering a Flyers game last night too. Like,
right, you were professionally working with one of the setups.
And that was the question. Like, how do you cover a Flyers game in the middle of the World Series? Like, it's your job, though. You do.
You do it.
I don't have a choice but to be paying attention to, for 3 games of the World freaking Series, I'm paying attention to a Flyers game, and it was what it was. Actually, I'm sorry, for 4 games, because last Saturday feels like a year ago.
Yeah, and you're telling me. So
let's ask this question.
Right, I do want to blend a little bit of this this Phillies narrative with kind of what we've been up to for the last couple of weeks. If you're a regular listener of the show, we haven't been here for about a month. We certainly appreciate you coming back.
It does not have to do with the Phillies completely.
Well, no, but we had a couple weeks off. We both had some stuff that we needed to take care of. We ended up skipping a couple of shows. I came home for a week. I was in Philly. It's something I talked about on the show before I came out there.
Before the Phillies made a run, we jokingly talked about we should get together and do a live show.
Right, and then
there was first of all, you were
NLCS Game 5 was the day I arrived, so like it just wasn't
and went to the Flyers.
Right, so I actually want to break this down. I told Kevin this story before the podcast started. So we landed in Philly at about 3:30-ish on Sunday. This is Game 5 of the NLCS, the Padres series.
So you landed in Philly an hour after the game started.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. It was before that. It was about 3:00. So it was shortly after the game had started.
Okay, so a half hour.
Right. So we landed. We we ran to my grandma's house, which is where we were staying. We threw all our bags down. She was gracious enough to let us borrow her car for the week. So we took her car. We drove over to the city. We park. We run inside. Also, I usually park in the Link parking lot. I had to park at the Wells Fargo Center because everything else was just full. Yep. Fair enough. So I pull into the Xfinity, Wells Fargo parking lot. You know where I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Parked there, walked inside. I get to the Cure Club where they're having a viewing party. I walk in. I say hello to my cousin who's been there for the whole game. Hi, Jackie, if you're listening. She's been there the whole game. They have a table. Great. We sit down. We say our hellos. We blah, blah, blah. While we're saying our hellos while we're hugging, JT Realmuto bloops it to left center field to start the bottom of the 8th. Or early in the bottom of the 8th. I don't know if he was the first batter.
He was.
Okay. So we sit down. We settle down. Next batter up's Bryce Harper. I look at my cousin's boyfriend. Hi, Eric. He's going yard here. Now, if you've watched the game, Harper went yard there.
Yep.
So the place went absolutely ballistic. I have a fantastic video on my phone that I know Kevin has seen.
Yep.
The city was a buzz. And that is not a term I use lightly.
No, but there's something special about being down in that area when
Philly loves their Phillies.
like I walked into the building for context. I got into the building that day in between. I was pulling off of the highway as the top of the 6th inning ended. So they
Okay.
are still leading the game 2-1. It's right before it really starts to open up with some of the rain. And I'm trying to list, like, they're still coming up to bat. And if the ball was put in play, I can so easily hear the crowd get a little bit of a rise. It's not the level. Like, I wasn't, if they would have been leading the whole way through, I may have run downstairs and run outside to just be able to put a camera on that ballpark and be able to hear how loud it would get in that situation. But everything happened so quickly from bottom of the 8th, Harper homers, they get the lead back. There's that realization in that moment. Like, to me, and we talk about this in hockey as much as we can in any other sport that has a 7-game playoff series. There's a moment when you know that something's probably going to happen. So, okay, listen, they won game 4 the night before and took a 3-1 series lead. In your head, you're kind of like,
you're
like, they got 3 shots at this. Oh my goodness, they're going to win the pennant.
Right, you're gonna put Nola out there. You're gonna put Wheeler out there. Like, you're gonna get a win here somewhere.
But when something like what Harper did happens, and it's that close, and you're now 3 outs, suddenly you went from 3 outs or 6 outs away from losing the game and going back to California to 3 outs away from winning the whole thing right then and there. You, like, the moment the ball goes out and you take a second to, like, realize what just happened, you go, there went, like, okay. Here's an example, and I think this, you were at Game 5 2010. Conference final, right?
Yep.
When Mike Richards scores, it only ties the game. Don't you know? Oh my goodness, they're winning this game. They're winning the conference. They're winning the Eastern Conference.
And it's a little bit different in baseball just because you can score infinite runs at any given time.
Yeah, there's no clock. I get it.
Right, yes. But I absolutely get what you're saying. I absolutely agree. There's that moment of, oh my God. The Phillies are going to the World Series. Like, it's gonna happen.
And there's moments, and it's funny because I did see a lot of people on Twitter last night. The ones that were like, listen, I'm not saying there were people who, like, I'm not trying to discount people who are angry at what happens. Like, everybody reacts differently to losing.
Sure.
Like, and believe me, we all living around here, we've all seen our share. I get it. I saw a lot of people that were comparing this Phillies team to the 2010 Flyers, because of the surprising nature of which the run happened.
They're not supposed to be here. Element of it.
Like you're the last seed to get in. You get in very close to the end of the season when everybody else kind of knew where they stood. You're the last team in. You're the team that's given no shot because of it. Maybe the only thing they didn't do per se,
sweep somebody.
Exact. Well, the only thing I'll compare to that was you were in the 9th inning of the very first game you played down 2-0 and you scored 6 runs.
That's pretty close
to
if they had won 6 and 7 against Houston, it would have felt like that.
A little bit, yeah.
Especially in Houston. But Game 7 in Houston would have felt a lot like Game 7 in Boston.
Right. So I want to continue to punctuate this where we've been thing with kind of like pulling the curtain back on what the last few Sundays have meant for us. Because,
you had some fun.
Well, okay. So let me tell you something about specifically watching a sports event, like not the World Series yet, obviously, but the playoffs in another time zone. And I know you're very familiar with this.
Hi.
Living in another, but you're only 1 time zone back. Going 3 back is,
man, I would kill to have a Flyers game end by 6:30 at night.
I need to tell then Saturday, October 15th is for you, buddy.
How sweet was that? Come on.
Okay, because let me tell you exactly how Saturday, October 15th went. Because that was the day of the wedding in California that I was at that took me away for a little while. So first of all, it's not something that I ever want to do, covering the Flyers. We rolled out of town the morning of the day before the regular season started. So I was missing the home opener. Do I ever want to miss a home opener? No. it is what it is. It was a one shot deal. You're going for something specific that you can't, like, it's not like I sat there and said, you know what, I'm going to California and going to Disneyland over the time that the Flyers are during the season. No, I didn't do that purposely. We were out there for a wedding. We did go to Disneyland in the process because it's like,
sure,
hey, by the way, you're out there. Right. I mean, well, let's put it this way. We got off the plane at, left Philly at 6:30 in the morning on Wednesday the 12th.
Oof.
Which means that after a near 6-hour flight, you land at just shy of 10 a.m.
Oh, with a whole day ahead of you, and you woke up at 4 o'clock to go to the airport.
It is, well, that is, but well,
sorry, it just sounds awful.
No, because you know what? You're running on adrenaline. the feeling of being tired kicked in at probably about 3 o'clock LA time when you've been up for about 12 hours. But by 6 o'clock, which try picturing, imagine picturing that your whole family is not with you at this point. Everybody's back in the Philly area, and you're getting ready to go to a hockey game that starts at 7 o'clock, but it's 10 o'clock where everybody else is. So you can't talk about it.
No.
You know what I mean? It's really funny how you have to wait until the next day to be like, hey, by the way, this game was great. So full context, the first hockey game I went to in the regular season was Ducks Kraken to open the season on October 12th. Great game, by the way.
Which sea creature emerged victorious?
The Ducks did.
The Ducks did, okay.
Yes. I don't know if I'd call the Ducks a sea creature.
They sit on lakes a lot.
They sit on lakes. Okay, they're a bird that sits on lakes. Okay. Lots of young players.
Something frozen pond.
Lots of young players on both teams, both of which had those young players mostly come through. There were 9 goals scored in the game. It was a 5-4 overtime result. Ducks win. Out of the 9 goals, 7 of them were total snipe jobs. Picking your spot, making a great shot.
You talking Zach McEwen snipe or?
Yeah, which unlikely source, I believe. But
I know, right?
But I'm sitting here as I recall that particular game. First of all, 51 seconds in, Troy Terry scores the first goal of the game. One of these broken plays, defense gets out of position. He's alone in front. He gets it. And then in one motion, gets it on his stick and then just goes straight to the top corner. And you're like, okay, let's get it going. And then literally, I'm not kidding, every goal Seattle scored was the sad part is the guy who scored the not cheapest, but the dirtiest goal out of him, which was
the grimiest,
which was getting his own rebound on I think on a power play, no less, but getting his own rebound was Matty Beniers, who, by the way, future star player because he's already off to a great start this year. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's other guys on it, but it was
we're gonna talk about some hot starts.
But it was really funny because Seattle's 2 newest players both scored goals because Burakovsky scored and Bjorkstrand scored.
Okay.
2 of the newest Ducks scored because Ryan Strome scored and Frank Vetrano scored in the game. And then I don't recall if I sent the video to the group. I thought I did.
I believe you did.
Of Zegras tying the game, which
that's building, cool.
And listen, it's a home opener, so everything, hope springs eternal when the season's new, right?
When everyone is 0-0, everyone,
No, which means building's packed, building's lively. Zegras tied the game with 6 minutes left on a power play.
Player.
The building starts. Let's go Ducks chants like crazy. It sounds like a playoff game at that point because everybody's fired up. And I'm sitting there going, this is awesome. You got to remember what I got to watch in person at the end of last season to realize I'm sitting there watching that game. I'm going, oh my goodness, this is fun.
This is fun hockey.
Full context, by the way, the last time I attended a hockey game as a fan maybe was 5 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been a long time, and it was a lot of fun. To kind of tie everything together, we were in Disneyland for the 2 days after that game, which included me checking in, not look, I take full credit for trying my best to keep up with game stories, and I did for those 2 days.
There's only so much you can do when you're
I walked around and in between, listen, you're in line for stuff, so
you might as well.
I had every opportunity to see what was going on. You got to remember something too. The Flyers opened the season with a 7 o'clock start against the Devils on a Thursday night in Philly. It was 4 o'clock where I was, and I'm going to I'm getting ready to find something for dinner, and I'm scrolling through. I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. Like they scored the 2 goals rapid fire. It comes across on my phone. It's 3-1. And I went, all right. So that's how
Cool.
this opener's going to go. Like everybody pegged it for the loss and they're going to win. Like, let's put it this way. The third period started. Travis Konechny scored 50 seconds into the third period to make it 4-1. And I went, okay, they're winning the home opener. All right.
Basically. Yeah, we talked earlier about like that moment when
okay,
you know.
Okay, so
yeah.
Let me get back to Saturday with this because this is the funny part. So the Phillies game was at 2:30 in the afternoon that Saturday in Philly. In Philly against the Braves.
Okay.
And the Flyers were playing. Talk about scheduling. This is how bad this was. The Flyers were playing at 4:00 Philly time. So, yes, an hour and a half difference between two sporting events in Philadelphia, one of which is a playoff game that can move a team on to the next round.
Perfect.
Yes.
Flawless planning.
Now, that was the day of the wedding we were going to, so nobody had any plans. We literally went to breakfast in the morning and then sat at the hotel bar for the rest of the afternoon watching the baseball game.
Yeah, tough life you live, huh?
Here's the context of watching that. It's 11 a.m. The game started at 11:30 in the morning and ended at about 2:30 in the afternoon.
I'm not going to lie to you. That sounds literally ideal.
With the wedding starting at 5. So the hockey game started at 1 and ended by 3:45. I wrote my story, was basically half dressed in the suit I was wearing to the thing. Like I basically had to throw on a tie and a jacket.
And if you were the story. And if you were a less dedicated professional, you would have watched the Phillies game and then taken a nap.
You're right. Oh, don't you worry. Don't you worry. That was a wedding where at that point in time for the rest of the night, I was able to enjoy myself, and enjoy myself I did. We were awesome. Already riding high with the way the Phillies were going, which, listen, outside of covering the Flyers and doing that as a job and doing this type of stuff, Eagles and Phillies and things like that, I am a fan.
We know.
Here, I am a fan. I am excited about it. I am proud.
Our listeners know you're a diehard. If you're not, you got to pay attention. Follow him at Kevin_Durso.
So, but there's something about a hockey game starting at 1:00 in the afternoon and finishing by 4 in California time.
Freaking fantastic.
And still having the whole night ahead. Like, it was like, believe me, getting back here and then doing the Tampa game from home was weird.
All right, so I think it's finally time to start talking about the Flyers. We've been kind of okay. Is there more?
No, not from me, but I want to get into what you came home for.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations are in order, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You've joined the club of people who have something. People who have one of these. Which,
if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you can see that Kevin and I are both displaying our wedding rings at the moment. I did indeed get married while I was home.
There's a horrible joke in here, which is that we have them and the Phillies don't. But
that's fair enough.
I know, but okay. Beyond the point. Nonetheless, it was obviously it was a crazy exciting time for you.
It was.
I don't know what that experience is like because it doesn't I didn't go and get married on one day per se. There's a whole you kind of did my best friend did exactly what you did.
Okay. Yeah, we did a pretty small family thing. It was me and my wife, our parents, grandparents, and siblings. That's it. All went out to a lunch. We had a quick little 10-minute ceremony with a justice of the peace.
Right.
It was very nice.
Did the courthouse.
We excused him, and then we had a very nice lunch.
There you go.
Basically, the rest of the week I spent with family, a couple family parties, seeing some friends that I don't get to see because I'm at home. But yeah, overall, it was really a fantastic time.
I mean, you were by this point you were home, but you're home, home in Illinois again.
Right, I am back. Yeah, I was back.
Because I'm going off of you were home by Halloween, but the week leading up to you were here was leading up to Halloween, so every party looked like a Halloween party.
Yeah,
which was pretty funny.
We didn't specify that people should come in costumes, and we didn't come in costumes. But I still had some family show up. We had some hocus pocus. We had we had some fun ones.
It's a weird kind of week when you're combining when the Phillies were good back when and good during this run. It's half the people for Halloween sit there and go, okay, listen, I'm going out as a Phillies player or something because it becomes a very quick and easy costume option when it's hey, listen, everybody in the city's already hyped up about it. What the hell?
Something I did want to mention while we were talking about kind of the runs and how the city feels and all that stuff. One thing I wanted to mention is the 2017 Eagles run felt almost aggressive, a little chip on the shoulder. F you, we're winning this thing. Like it felt kind of angry until they
Right.
won. The Phillies, both in 2008, 2009, that era, and also this run, it's much more relaxed. It's much more, yeah, man, we're here, we're having fun, and it just the Eagles felt very tense. People
I
were
think the
very
reason
nervous about not having a championship since 1960,
I
and the
think that the
Phillies, I think we have a
reason
lot more fun.
because I think that you have to, like, in any sport like baseball, hockey, basketball, whatever, those are the three obvious ones that come to mind. When there's more than one game involved, I think there's some people who
I
can't
agree.
listen. No, listen. There's something that some people can't do when it comes to these things. Like, some people cannot compartmentalize that each game does not hold the same, like, over the course of a series. Not doesn't hold the same magnitude, but can't take the ride is the way.
Right. Every series has ebbs and flows, and you have to be
Right,
able to
like,
ride that wave.
and listen, I'm not saying I'm not one of those people. It's look, when you're watching the game in the moment, there's things that frustrate you that you go back on later and you say, I didn't really care that much that they lost that one game when they win. Okay, I was very frustrated when the Phillies lost game 2 to San Diego when they led 4-0. Like, you think you got to have that game. You got to have that game. And you're freaking out about it. But in hindsight, you sit there and you go, that's part of the ride. They bounced back 2 days later. Then they finished the series off. It's part of the journey. Like,
You have to have the mental strength to watch them get no hit in game 4 and then watch Kyle Schwarber start game 5 with a home run.
right. And give
Like,
yourself a reason to get up.
Right. That's the ride. And that just describes this team so incredibly. I know we talked about the Phillies and we've kind of moved past those, but this run was so much fun. I will admit.
Sure.
I will full blown admit, right here on the show, on YouTube, make sure to follow us on YouTube, I didn't watch a single game this regular season. I don't know if I watched a single inning. I saw a clip here and a clip there. I never sat down and watched baseball. I watched every single game of this playoff run. Game 1 against the Cardinals, I watched the whole thing because I happen to be in Cardinals local viewing territory.
Well, there you go. That's fair.
But I watched this whole run, and it's a fun team.
Right.
Schwarber's fun. Harper's fun. Alec Bohm turned it around and had a lot of fun this year.
There's a lot of things to be excited for with them moving forward. Like, it's the opposite of, it very much was the opposite of the Flyers right now. We came we came into the season and there was we felt like we had nothing to not nothing to say, but it was what did I say the week before the Flyers started? Which I already have.
They're gonna be bad. They're gonna be a bottom 5 team in the league.
No. What did I say? Because the preseason just ended, and I came on and I said, this team, because I said it on 2 separate shows. I said it on ours and I said it on B. I said they might win 4 games in the first 20. That was how I was feeling after a preseason where they won the first game and then lost the next 5. That was how I was feeling.
And then they won 4 games in the first 6.
The thing about it's like you're sitting here, you're talking about how it was fun and all that type of stuff. But the thing is when you can get behind a team or feel like it's going in a good direction, there's something about it. Like you mentioned how you didn't watch a single inning leading up to or whatever. Look, I love baseball. It's as much as I get up for Sundays and look, the Eagles are 8-0 and it's fun. It's still probably my number 3 just because it's the one that I probably latched onto later than any other.
I know you're a big baseball guy, and then you cover the Eagle or cover the Flyers. So hello.
Well, hockey was my very original number 1. I can't take that away. It was the first sport I remember watching. So I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm a bigger baseball fan than hockey fan. No, hockey was my original number 1 for a really long time. In between, I liked baseball and was watching baseball probably more than more than I was watching hockey, in the sense that I would watch baseball like I watch hockey now, where I would watch other teams' games. I wouldn't care who was on. It's there's a baseball game on, I will watch that. That's fine.
Oh, Padres are playing the Mariners? Sure.
It probably wasn't quite like that, but yeah, to your point, you're probably right. Kind of in that range. And so over the court, the thing that really makes me connect with the run that they just went on was, when I was in high school or in college, and that was right in the heart of that run, 07 to 11, I would go to probably 15 games a year. And I didn't even I didn't have season tickets. It was
Phillies tickets get pretty cheap during most summers. Let's be honest.
That's not really the reason why. What I would do is I would end up buying something 6 to 10 games for myself. And then over the course of the summer, I'd either like
you got friends who let's go,
spur of the moment go, have a friend who says I got an extra ticket, want to go, have somebody who would know, like I got tickets from all over the place. Hey, somebody knows somebody and they have an extra, like they have tickets for the night they can't go. Do you want the pair?
There's a lot of flexibility in Phillies tickets.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. And part of the reason why I think people didn't go this year, attendance was a very big topic over the summer. I think that it's a pre-planned thing. You look at your summer and like during the heart of that time, your summer was, we're going to a bunch of Phillies games this summer, or a lot of people said we'll go to a Phillies game. This past summer, it was the weather's nice. It wasn't a must be at event. It wasn't the place to be, like going to a Phillies game. And so given the summer that I had, I made it to 3 games this year. That was it. 3. But during the course of the summer, we moved in, like we got a new place. We moved in.
You had a busy summer, right?
Well, I had a busy summer, but during when I'm over here painting the walls of just about every room in the house, and I'm doing it like late afternoonish, it's going like past 7 o'clock, or the Phillies maybe played during the afternoon. Like they played during a Saturday afternoon in St. Louis at like 2 o'clock, and I was over here painting, and I listened to the entire game on the radio because we didn't have the TVs set up yet and all that stuff, but I listened to the entire game on the radio while I painted the house. And I did this for like at least a week or so, where it's like, we're just doing nothing more than painting things. And I'm listening to the ball game while I do this work, because
baseball's a very casual sport. And
it's casual, but it was like fun to be able to listen to. I had other people over who were helping, who were then listening to it too, who were interested.
You know, it's ironic that we're talking so much about baseball, because you notice what episode number it is, right?
Yeah, 162. That's interesting.
Huh. And we're talking about the lengths of a baseball schedule, and it's just interesting that it happens to be episode 162.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, if you're like the Phillies this past, October, you play way more than that. What did they end up finishing at that point? I mean, they won 11 games out of the 13 they needed to begin with, and hadn't lost more than 2 coming in, so they played 6 extra games on top of that. So that's 17 extra games total on top of the 162 they played. When you turn your schedule all of a sudden into almost 180.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's 179 that they played.
And it's the same as like hockey teams making a deep run and going from 82 games to like 105. At least 100,
yeah.
Right? And you're like, oh my god, that's a lot of hockey.
Yeah. So let's get into this start.
Yeah. So okay. Somehow, some way, we sit here on Sunday, November 6th, and the Flyers have a positive record. Now, not only do they have a positive record, they are 3rd in the division. They are, I know it's early, but they're in a playoff spot, factually speaking. And it's funny because we're getting very close. A lot of the reporters, Elliot Friedman talks about it a lot. American Thanksgiving is a big benchmark for a lot of teams. And if you're in a playoff spot on American Thanksgiving, historically speaking, you are something like 75-80% to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is not everybody. That is not a guarantee. There's overlap every year. But we are now in a position, right? We missed basically the first 10% of the season, 15% of the season here on the show.
Mm-hmm.
The Flyers aren't good, right?
The way they're playing isn't good. Their record is good.
Right. But I'm talking about the actual team.
No, but okay,
not.
Do you want? I mean, listen. I can in 10 seconds. I can probably summarize what's going on so far, and then we can elaborate for the rest of the show. Obviously, but in 10 seconds, I can tell you what the deal is. Carter Hart has been outstanding.
If the first 2 words of that sentence weren't Carter Hart, we were going to have a problem.
No, Carter Hart's been outstanding. You can't deny what the record is. The process is not sustainable.
Okay.
That's the way it is. Now,
I agree with you. All those things are true.
Right. Like if you needed 3 statements to sum up the season at this point, it's Carter Hart has played outstanding. The record is what the record is. Like 6-3-2 is a good record to start the season. There are plenty of if you look,
you shouldn't be expecting that moving forward.
No, well, right, but if you look at some of the other teams that are in and their records, they would all a bunch of them would take 6-3-2 if you could switch their record out.
Oh,
the Flyers have.
For example, the Penguins would take it in a heartbeat. Just where they're.
I'm thinking of let's this way. How, do you think Columbus would take that reversed record?
Yeah.
Seriously, there's teams out there that had higher expectations that would take a 6-3-2 record in 11 games and feel way better about themselves right now than
the Flyers should. Right.
Well, no, I think the Flyers should feel good about themselves for not certain guys should. I'll say it that way. I think there's certain guys who are playing to a level that you can understand how they contribute to a 6-3-2 start. Contribute being the key word. I'm not saying they're the reason. The reason is Carter Hart.
Right. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one real, there are contributors, but there's only one reason.
No, but okay, here's the thing. Ask yourself this question when it comes to the record and the way that the team plays. Right?
Have the Flyers won a game with Felix Sandstrom?
Well, no, I get that.
Okay.
But this is what I'm getting at. Carter Hart plays all 60 minutes of a game. Everybody else does not. So there are other players who I think can step out there that you can look at in certain games and say, that guy played really well, helped them win a game. Okay, I'll give you an example of one game that comes to my head that I just think makes a difference. The Flyers beat Nashville 3-1 a couple weeks ago. I think that as good as Carter Hart was in that game to help them get the win, Joel Farabee played great, but Joel Farabee's not on the ice for 60 minutes.
Right.
So
you can only expect so much.
So Joel Farabee leaves his mark on that game, plays great. I think that in that game also, I think Kevin Hayes had a big game that night. Maybe that entire top line. I think it was Farabee, Hayes, and Konechny all played well in that game. But they aren't out there the entire time. At the end of the night, the guys that end up winning the game, Carter Hart makes all the saves. Some of the guys who end up helping you win that game are maybe I'm changing the tune here a little bit because I'm going to go to another game recency bias, I guess, or just it's fresh in my head. Scott Lawton had a block shot last night against Ottawa that you sit there and you go, they don't win the game without something like that. Lucas Sedlak blocked a shot with his foot that was going in the net. Yep. Okay, without those things happening, you don't win the game. So there's
Fair
guys
enough.
who are contributing in a way. I think what people are looking at that, and this is where I think the non-sustainable part comes from. They give up an inordinate amount of shots.
A ton of shots.
They are not exactly a high power. I mean, now, granted, the funny part is I'm looking at certain, okay, we want to talk about the game against Ottawa that they win 2-1. That was the exact kind of game that John Tortorella tried to prepare you for. They weren't going to win games 4-2 and 5-3 and blah, 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 right? But they beat the Florida Panthers 4-3, and they beat, Tampa Bay 3-2, or they beat the Devils 5-2, and you're like, okay, those are a little bit different from what you said. That's what you said don't get used to, and you have won a game like that too.
By the way, the Flyers are allowing 36.45 shots per game.
It's impossible to sustain what you're doing with. Now, granted, if the process starts to change, something may change. I just don't I don't know if I see it now. Part of the reason why
on the other side of things, by the way, they're averaging 26.45 shots per game. So they're getting outshot by an average of 10 shots per game.
Right. I don't think, and here's the thing. I don't think that the game they just played against Ottawa was terrible in that process. When you think, first of all, they dominated the second period in shots, legitimately.
Right.
Against Ottawa, they outshot Ottawa in the second period 17-10.
Sure.
That's actually a good period. You cannot deny they played a good period. And to be honest, the third period, at least down the stretch was when a lot of the shots came in. So getting outshot,
a lot of score effects towards the end of the game.
Right. Listen, of course you're going to be on your heels in the final 3 minutes of a game with the goalie pulled. It's like a power play. I think Ottawa had at least one more power play in the third period. There's an element where you get it, right? Where you get the shot disparity coming into play because, I don't think a shot disparity of 34-28 is that bad.
No, that's not bad.
It's the game against Florida a couple weeks ago where they get outshot 51-22 and somehow win the game 4-3.
Right.
That's the game where you sit there and you go, listen, I don't know how they're winning these games, but they're winning these games.
Carolina, where they get outshot 38-29. That's not too bad, but still not great.
There's a difference for me in that game though, and the difference is that they actually lost the game.
Okay.
If you are playing a game like Tampa, I think Tampa's another good one, 38-24. Yeah, there you go. Because when you bend but don't break and the shot total says what it says, that's when you start to pull out that it's not sustainable.
Right.
When the shot total is that bad, against Carolina, and you do break, they get you, eventually. That's
So
same
I'm
thing
also.
happened against the Rangers this
I
week.
was going to say I'm going to point out the Rangers game. It was
36-19 was the shot total. And the funny part is the last shot went in.
Yep.
That at one point in time, the shot total read 35-19 and no goals had been scored in the game, and you were down to the final minute of overtime.
I'm going to say something that I said in the group chat, something that I have expressed to a number of people. If you think this Flyers team should be bad, if you think this team should be a bottom 5 team in the league, if you think this team should be going after Connor Bedard, if you think this team should be selling assets, whatever terminology you want to use, if tank is in your mind, you must, at this point, be in favor of a Carter Hart trade. And I'm not saying that I want Carter Hart to be traded, because I am a fan. If you've been listening to this show forever, you know I've been talking about Carter Hart since the start of the show. I love Carter Hart. I want Carter Hart to be a Philadelphia Flyer for life.
Right.
But if you want this team to be bad, if you want this team to be as bad as they probably need to be for the good of the franchise, you have to be in favor of a Carter Hart.
Okay, so this is fair because I'm not saying I agree with this conversation, but here's where I'll go with this because there are two thoughts I have when I'm watching Carter Hart do what he's doing right now. Number one is because I got a lot of stuff right away on this very topic. That what is this worth? That and okay, I was getting this 3 games into the season, and 3 games into the season, it's laughable to think like this because. Okay, great. They won all 3 of their first 3 games, and whether it was sustainable or not is beside the point. They won all 3 of the first games. They're getting the goaltending performance, and I have people who are messaging me telling me, say goodbye to Bedard and goodbye to Fantilli and all this stuff because they've won the first 3 games of the year, and it's like you realize there's 79 games to go.
Right.
That's an awful long time. Like the maximum point total is 6 in 3 games. You mean to tell me that you don't believe in your mind that some team out there can't make up a 6-point deficit or that this team can't lose that many games to get to to get the 6 points made up on them?
And we're having that conversation 3 weeks into the season. It's not like we're talking about January.
Well, right. Just 3 games. Then, okay, so now I understand, like, if you're a little bit more concerned today, I understand it.
Oh, I'm fully concerned, by the way.
Hold on. Yep. But just hold on. I understand if you're a little bit more concerned today because now you're at a point where, okay, like what I did because I'll do the same thing I did in 3 games in, and now it's a little bit more real because to say these statements 3 games in, you don't know what the answer is. Let's put it this way: they were 3-0 in the first 3 games of the season, and I came on here before the season started and said they were going to win 4 of their first 20.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, I was wrong about that. Like. I hear you. I think, but I think everybody is surprised.
And I think we both sat here.
Like
on
I don't think anybody out there
show.
is looking at me like, "Hey, you're an idiot. Why'd you say they would win 4 of their first 20?" No, like, right. Look, if you want to sit there and point the finger at me for saying that, and it's like, oh, by the way, you're like because I'm one of the media guys,
right?
That they're sticking it to us. No. They're sticking it to everybody right now with the record. Like John Tortorella is sitting there looking at this going, this is all I heard the entire time was we're not supposed to win games, blah, blah, blah. And we're winning games. He may not
So one thing I do want to mention about John Tortorella is that one of the things he talked about early in training camp is that the culture was broken and that things were bad, this and that. We talked about those quotes on this show.
Right.
11 games in, and now maybe this changes if they have 40 crap games after this.
Right.
Right now, it seems like the vibes are good. The room is working together. Guys are standing up for each other. Guys are, like, say what you want about the talent. I don't think this team has the talent to make any sort of real noise. But as far as the vibe, the culture, the whatever terminology you want to use goes, it seems like Tortorella has done a pretty good job managing that so far.
Well, so there's a couple things in there. So I think that they all know that what they're doing is not really sustainable. Like the number of times, like if you looked, let's just do this for fun here for a second. They're 6-3-2 through 11 games. That gives them 14 points in the standings. That is tied for the 10th most in the league.
Right.
You already said third in the division, all that type of stuff. At one point in time, probably before this road trip or about at this road trip, they were actually in first place in the Metro for like a couple of nights.
Yep.
And the thought behind it was like this to the players, to the coach who's like trying to create this. Is this a good is this a good thing? Like, because that's what you're building towards something. If you're winning games and actually there while you're at it,
sure.
To you, is this good? And
I'm never going to tell a team to go out there and not try to win games.
Sure. And I think that, first of all, for the number of times after these games, you've got 6 wins on the year, but for the number of times John Tortorella has said, there's still, we got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go. He continues to say this, which, here's the thing. It's still a little bit of mixed signals to me, because as much as he's going to say we have a long way to go in what? Because we've talked about that process a lot, like the games that I've been at, the process has come up plenty of times. This basically the fact that unless if the goaltender in between the pipes is named Carter Hart, they have a chance to win the game because he's making a ton of saves. He's playing out of his mind brilliant. I'm going to get into the specifics of that in a minute.
He's playing ridiculous, yeah.
But he's playing out of his mind ridiculous right now. And the thought process being what they're doing is not sustainable. Now, there's 2 schools of thought with this. Number one is we can keep saying that all we want to. If they keep winning games, it doesn't matter.
If Carter Hart just straps the team to his back,
it doesn't. No, but it doesn't matter because you don't take them away. They've won 6 out of 11 games so far. Can you take those 6 games away? No, whether you like the way it was done or not. No, you can't take them away. Nope. They've won. Game over.
The Flyers have 14 points in the standings, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Right. That's number one. But the other part and this was talked about after the Florida game, I think, that they won. Because John Tortorella basically he's acknowledged this before, I think, but this was really where it came up. Because the concept is that the analytics look terrible. And we know this. The analytics of puck possession, shot attempts.
And whatever reporter used the word analytics in a question to John Tortorella, you knew what you were doing. You knew you were lighting the fuse. Come on.
You know damn well who used analytics in a question, and I don't care whether he
Charles, was that you?
But Charlie makes good points about it though, because you can't
absolutely
be the team that ranks that low. I mean, at one point in time, they're the last or second to last team.
But you also know you're throwing a lit match at a powder keg if you're Charlie.
No, you know what you were trying to do? You were just trying to get a healthy answer, which was, and I say healthy in the sense that a healthy answer is, even if they you can sit there and say, we know we're not going to be the best analytic team, or we know that we're not playing the best by those numbers, and those are things we have to improve upon. Right now, we're taking the fact that our goaltender's playing well and we're winning games. That would have sufficed. Right. All he has to say is, this is not good enough because we know we're getting schooled in these areas.
Analytics are trash.
Right. Well, Tortorella
is what we got.
Okay, well, in fairness, if you're going to sit there and say that the guy asking the question knew what he was doing,
I know.
And the coach
so did Tortorella.
Doing too.
Well,
John Tortorella, please, the coach who came out after they lost in overtime to Carolina, and everybody was ready to sit there and go 1 for 6 on the power play, outshot 30. What did I say? That was 38 to
29, something like that, yeah,
or something like that. Everybody was waiting. The first real torts moment that we've gotten out of a press conference didn't have to do with we sucked from head to toe. It was. He said that at a press conference too. He actually said that after the game you were at. That it was just bad.
They sure did too. Holy.
Sure, but his answer in this case, to give you the torts that everybody knows, was glass half full, guys.
Yep,
he's half full after a game like that.
And I do want to make a bit of positives. I do want to make a bit of a broader point, just kind of on how people of a certain age look at analytics. John Tortorella can sit here and say, analytics are trash, and we don't listen, blah, 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 whatever.
The team hires a guy who literally does this.
Well, he will then in the next sentence acknowledge that they have their own internal metrics, and these are the ones, they follow these certain things, and they don't look at the numbers that everyone else puts out. They don't look at Dom Lucian's, GSV percent, whatever. I don't know all the numbers.
Guess what? No, guess what? No team in the league does.
Sure, and that's fine. But I think John Tortorella looks at their internal metrics and gives them weight. he doesn't have time.
I think he has to.
Right, but he doesn't have time for the broader Twitter conversation, I think is the point from him. But I think if you asked him, okay,
no, but
do you care about Corsi? John Tortorella would say no. John Tortorella, do you care about the shot attempts you give up versus the shot attempts that your team receives? He would say yes. Those are basically the same thing. It's just about what skin you put on it for the slightly older people.
I get your point. Like if he's not saying the word like the course he's awful, but he's sitting here going, we give up too many shots.
Exactly, and he does use analytics. He does give them weight. He just doesn't give these very specific this Twitter follow blah blah blah.
It's the terminology. He's not going to hit you with an analytics term, but realistically what he's talking about is
analytics. Right. Exactly. You're watching the sport. Breaking down tape leads you directly to analytics.
Do you know what makes people discount that? Because he's not going to look at he's not going to tell you that he looked at a piece of paper from the analytics department that they have and that it says we have numbers that tell you that our shot attempts are this, our zone entries look like that, this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
He doesn't go off of that. His answer is, my eyes and my gut are the two things
this is what my eyes tell me.
Yep. Right. Which at the same time can tell you the same thing. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know how you're watching any of the 11 games they've played this season and not coming away with the same analysis, whether you do it by numbers on a sheet of paper or by watching the game. It looks the same way.
I know they have 6 wins. How many of those 11 games were they the better team? Because it wasn't 6 of them.
I think that they were the better team against New Jersey that particular night.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about it as a whole. I'm talking about on that night.
I think they were a better team against New Jersey in the opener. Yep. I think they were. I think to an extent, I think they actually possibly were the better team against Ottawa last night for parts of it. Because I think that there's something missing with Ottawa. Like, I think Ottawa got on their heels in the second period.
I think Ottawa,
that was the first time I remember seeing a team on their heels. Probably the better team against Vancouver because after the first, even the first period, they got beat by the goal, like the classic, getting out shooting an opponent. But
the crazy thing is, by the way, about Ottawa is I don't even necessarily think they need to add anything. I think they just need to add 20 games to Shane Pinto, and they'll be fine.
Maybe. I think
they're just a young team that's still growing
I think in the
up.
early going, they're missing Josh Norris a lot.
That is fair.
Let's put it this way. Why do the Flyers look the way that they do at every other position that's not goaltender? Go look at the injury report, though. To an extent, I'm not saying injuries are an excuse, but it's aren't they a more talented roster if Sean Couturier is playing? Aren't they a more talented roster if Cam Atkinson's playing? Obviously that makes a difference. I'm sorry, when you're running around with, at one point in time, what was their fourth line? Luke
Sedlak, Lazinski.
And here's the thing. Sedlak legitimately can skate.
Oh yeah, he's been fine.
He's been fine actually as a fourth line. He's exactly but you're not going to you're also not going to tell me the reason why he's here.
Right.
The reason why he's here is because he played for Tortorella in Columbus.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I can't help but go there. But but if you're asking me what games they were the better team, I think that out of 11, the answer is 4. I think they were the better team against New Jersey on that night when they opened. I think they were the better team against Vancouver because I think those 2 games, process-wise, it was better. They outshot Vancouver that night, that afternoon, 31-30.
Yeah,
they played a better game than Vancouver.
I think they were the better team that day because Vancouver was bad. Quite frankly,
but Vancouver has continued to be bad, which
I know
I think is part of it. Maybe so, but if that's the case, then you were the better team. Guess what?
But you get what I'm saying.
But New Jersey's playing a hell of a lot better now than they were in the
opener.
Absolutely.
And you're glad you got that win off of them when you did.
And they were the better team that day, right?
That's fair. Yeah.
I think that they were the better team against Nashville, to be honest.
Okay.
They didn't get outshot that badly against Nashville that I say, oh my goodness, that was I think that they had to hold on for dear life in the third period, but I think that for the first 2, they were the better team.
Okay. And that's fair.
Even though they got actually in the third period, they probably locked it down better. They outshot Nashville in that third period.
Were they the better team against Tampa?
No.
Were they the better team against Florida when they beat Florida?
No.
I'm still on the fence about Ottawa last night. I think they were probably the better team, but again, I think it's more about Ottawa's
you know what? Hang on.
There's
one other game where I think they were possibly the better team. It's going to sound weird, but they were the better team, I think, against San Jose, and I think they sabotaged themselves.
So that's the game I was at.
Right.
And
I'm just saying that in the third period, of that game.
Yeah.
They outshot San Jose 16-6 to finish the game totals at outshooting them 30-25.
Yeah, but that's just score effects. Like you're always going to outshoot when you're down in the third period, or at least you should be outshooting when you're down in the third period.
Yes, but there's something to me that makes that a little bit more impressive when you took two of your best offensive guys off the ice.
That is fair.
That's where I think that's what I mean. I'm saying like I think they actually were the better team in that game, and the reason it got lifeless at the end, like it might be 16 shots that aren't that great. The reason it's 16 shots that aren't that great though is because I think you sabotaged yourself by trying to make a point.
That's fair.
Like,
and maybe that's worth it in 2 weeks into the season.
Oh, I think there's like actually like think about it for a minute. They played that third period against San Jose, outshoot them for the period 16-6, outshoot them for the game 30-25, and in that entire third period, James Van Riemsdyk is gone with a finger injury that he's out with currently, and Kevin Hayes and Travis Konechny didn't move from the spot on the bench where they were sitting. Yep. That's actually kind of impressive. Like it shows how don't get me wrong, it shows how bad San Jose has been to start the year, but it's actually kind of impressive that for a team that's been outshot as regularly as they have, and for a team that has been outplayed as regularly as they have, that still has 6 wins nonetheless, that I think that you literally threw the rest of that like for the crowd that wants them to be the tanking team, that was a tanking effort to me.
Oh yeah.
Because you threw the game.
You benched some of your most productive offensive players.
And maybe you were doing it for the greater good in terms of I'm sending a message. This is game what would this have been? Game 7 of the year?
Something like that. 6.
Game 6 of the year, and I'm sending a message right now that 2 of the top line players aren't seeing the ice tonight.
They didn't give the effort. They're sitting. Yep.
Because I don't feel like they're giving what I need, and that's welcome to John Tortorella 101.
Which, to be fair, is something that both of those players have struggled with in their career. Kevin Hayes and Travis Konechny have both been guilty of mailing it in from time to time.
And guess who had 2 assists in the very next game against Florida? Both of those guys.
Yep.
Because sometimes
Travis Konechny against Toronto, I know it was about a week and a half later, he was a menace in that game.
There's a lot of things I like. Because obviously you're focused in probably more than anything on the scrum at the end of the game.
Mark Giordano absolutely spearing him. Yeah.
I love by the way, I know that people don't like because I heard about I love the conversation that's going on around Austin Matthews for that one, by the way.
Okay.
Because people wanted him, like there's people out there who wanted him to stand up. He started it.
Right.
So I obviously don't want the guy fighting, and I get that. But
I've heard a little bit of the conversation via Steve Dangle podcast. Here's my opinion on it. When you initiate conflict twice in the same scrum and then refuse to get physically involved,
right?
We're looking at some like Ty Domi shenanigan territory. And obviously I'm not comparing those two as players, but just, you know what I'm talking about. You remember the clip of Ty Domi slashing somebody running. You know the clip I'm talking about where he's running from 16 different people.
And then going third man in on another situation.
On somebody who's getting tied up. Right.
Right.
And I'm not saying Austin Matthews did that. He didn't do anything like inherently nasty, dirty, whatever.
But it's the second. Like your point is, it's the second one. If he initiates something with Travis Konechny and they don't like, and the rest of his teammates don't like what they see, it's oh my goodness, he's not their captain, but he's their best player. Like,
they're diving it right, and he would have been their captain if he wasn't afraid of it.
Nope, this isn't happening tonight.
Totally,
this game is over. I'm taking this into my own hands.
I give Giordano zero grief for stepping in.
But Konechny was still out there at that given moment after it had settled, and he does it.
And
again.
Matthews comes back over and cross-checks him.
Right.
At that point,
when you re-engage, you're asking for it.
At that point, Konechny should drop the gloves and start swinging. Like, he's come at you twice in 2 separate, isolated incidents with a little bit of a scrum in between. He circled back around and cross-checked you again. That is a re-engagement, and at that point, we're throwing hands. I don't care that he's given up 80 pounds and almost a foot.
Do you know something, though? I know where you're coming from. There is a lot to be very careful with in that situation. And I'll tell you why. You have a lot of, first of all, in that given moment, you have a lot of your key guys out there at that given moment. Like if Konechny's out there, then Hayes, I think, was out there. Like You don't want anybody who's that significant to your roster, and like they already have enough injuries. They don't need anybody else. Hold on, they don't need anybody else getting hurt. Here's another part of it that I think is important because I've seen this enough times to know what happens. So I didn't get a chance to look at this team in person until that San Jose game. That was like regular season wise. I've only been to 3 home games, obviously, because that's all that they've been home for outside of the first 2 games they played.
Right.
If a scrum happens on the ice and Tony DeAngelo is on the ice, there is a look in his eyes that he is not going to let it go, and that is at one point in time or another going to get him in serious trouble.
Oh yeah,
and he was on the ice.
And we've already seen it.
And he's we
haven't seen it get him in. No, we haven't seen it get him in trouble yet.
But you can tell. You look at the look on his face. Look at the way, like the exertion of energy to go hard after somebody.
Mentally soft.
Maybe
he's getting chirped. He's getting chirped in every game, and he's snapping in every game. Brady Tkachuk lived in his head yesterday.
I don't think I didn't. Well, unless I missed something, I don't think he was that bad yesterday. Like,
and it's not about him being bad. It's not about him being bad. It's about him taking a stupid penalty. It's about him. Like, and I don't think he did that yesterday, but just
I don't think he took a stupid penalty yesterday.
But he's done it before. He's done it this season. I don't remember what game, but he took a stupid penalty at some point where he's just slashing somebody for no reason.
I want to say it might have been the Florida game because I think it felt like it was one of those types of games where they had already seen the team. So
that game bubbled for sure.
Well, and let's put it this way. Especially if you like, and look, I was up late enough last night that I saw this. If Florida played on the West Coast last night. They got some pests too because personally, if the clip is out there, just look up what Matthew Tkachuk did last night, and he should be getting a phone call today. But
oh yeah, I agree.
He should be getting a phone call today. But so I'm not denying that there aren't pests on Florida's roster, but
for sure,
I kept saying in the press box that night, if he doesn't calm down, he's gonna take an unnecessary penalty. Yep. Like he's gotta calm down, and he doesn't know how to. That's the part that's the most worrisome, is he doesn't know how to.
Right. So one of the things I love about Scott Laughton is that he plays with a grit. He plays with a fire. He's involved in the nasty stuff. He's involved in the chirping. He's involved in the physicality. But he doesn't let it affect his play. Most of the time. Most of the time. Sometimes the wires cross.
No, I got to give somebody credit that listen, I wouldn't normally go here with this one. I got to give somebody credit because I think not only is he playing on a good level, like he's given the energy level that people seem to like about him, but he's not doing anything, I think, overly stupid. Zach McEwen's off to a decent start.
Yep, that's exactly the name I was just thinking.
And he's the type of guy who's going to go out there and get into a fight or do something like that, but he's not like, it's not the entirety of his game.
Right.
I'm not trying to say that this is the entirety of Tony DeAngelo's game, but when the scrums happen, you have to know when to cut it off. When
he can't walk away. Right.
He kind of can't.
He's going to get...
But you got other guys on the roster who were brought in here, or the thought was it's going to make them tougher, right?
Delorier.
I don't feel, but I don't feel that from Nick Delorier. I don't feel that from Zach McEwen. Like, they get into the scrums a little? Of course they do.
That's what they're getting paid for.
Right. They're out there as protectors. But they've cut it off every single time. Like Laughton knows when to chill, and I see there's defensemen who
Ristolainen can get physical, but knows when not to cross the line. And
you know who goes after as a defenseman? You know who goes after guys pretty tough when it comes to trying to clear. Sometimes I think the guys who are most aggressive in the look of what they're doing are doing it because they're not the best at the position. Nick Seeler does this. Nick Seeler, when he decides I'm going to throw
makes up for lack of talent with enthusiasm.
Think of it. When he says I'm going to throw hands, he's really throwing hands. It's kind of funny. But, and I think, to an extent, okay, DeAngelo doesn't know when to calm down with it. Here's the funny part about that.
Maybe he should just tweet about it.
Well, anyway. Here's the funny part about it. I was watching the Toronto game, and he's out there, and Matthews, I haven't listened to Dangle podcast or anything, but I did see his video after the Flyers game, and he put up the picture of Austin Matthews on a power play alone in the slot. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, because you realize how bad of a penalty killer Tony DeAngelo is, right? I've had enough of Tony DeAngelo penalty killer.
I agree.
Like, I understand why he's on a power play. I understand that, like, at 5-on-5, and right now, given your injury situation, you have to use him in a bigger role.
Sure.
But I've had enough of Tony DeAngelo, the penalty killer.
You can stop that sentence after I've had enough. Well, anyway.
I hear you. But, like, no, like, Ivan Provorov killing penalties, I understand it.
Yep.
I at this point, I understand. Like,
even Travis Sanheim, Travis
Sanheim, I get it. But Justin Braun killing penalties, I get it. Nick Seeler killing penalties. Hell, I get it.
Right.
But there is something that I will take solace in from last night, specifically.
Okay.
And that is that Rasmus Ristolainen was a healthy scratch, which is another example of if you are not playing to a level that is expected of you, then you're not going to play.
Tortorella has been doing...
John Tortorella has sat down...
And that's what I'm talking about when I bring up the fact that the culture is better than it was 6 months ago.
Right. Well, because at this point in time, you have two examples. You have that San Jose game where for the entire third period, whether you like it or not, what was that? $13.5 million sat on your bench for the entire third period.
Yep.
Against Ottawa.
When JVR was already out, who's making $7.
Well, but injury-wise, it's a different story.
But I'm saying, with JVR out, he still chose to sit. You know what I mean?
Sure. And then against Ottawa, $5 million was a healthy scratch. 5.1 if I'm being technical, but you get the point. But, like, a guy who makes $5 million was benched and sat out for a game as a healthy scratch over Igor Zamula.
John Tortorella wouldn't have put up with any of the Keith Yandle nonsense.
They should be lucky that happened the way that it all did.
So you mentioned Dangle podcast for a second, and when they talked about the game on the most recent podcast, they said a phrase. Steve goes, "Carter Hart must be the best goalie in the league because the Flyers are shocking in their own end." And I absolutely believe that because we've been talking. The whole theme of this show is the fact that this is Carter Hart propping up the ship.
Okay, well here's the thing.
Let me get you some numbers here.
Well, but because I'm assuming that the podcast that Dangle did went off of the post game, like the Leaf fan report, right?
Basically.
Because to me, and I'm not criticizing here, because if you watched just that game, then yes, that the coverage in their end in that game was atrocious. Travis Sanheim got beat like a rented mule when John Tavares is making moves around him. Ristolainen looked like garbage. DeAngelo looked like garbage. Provorov probably didn't have the best game because of it. And that night, I think they put in that was the night that they sat Braun and put in Seeler to play with, or put in Zamula to play with Seeler, which speaks for itself. I don't even know if they were on the ice for any of the goals against. It doesn't matter. Like, I know who was on the ice for at least a handful of the goals against because Sanheim played terribly, and your penalty kill had DeAngelo on it when Matthews scored a goal. Like, think about that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to go into whether or not Seeler and Zamula were out on the ice for a situation where they got scored on. Who cares? And
it's funny because the way that game played out, like, if it wasn't the second half of a back-to-back, if Carter Hart was in net, they would have had a shot in that game. Like, and I'm not saying Felix Sandstrom played terribly because, like, even though he doesn't have a win yet this season, he hasn't been atrocious. I think
I think that was probably still his worst game.
That's fine. That's fair.
Like, he lost to San Jose, and then he lost to, I forget who the other star was.
The second goal he gave up against San Jose was weak.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. So he lost to San Jose because what was the other game he would have lost to? Oh, Florida. San Jose was the second one. So Toronto was the third because he's gotten the back end of a lot of the back-to-backs, which here's the truth of the matter. I don't think it matters that it was a back-to-back.
No, that's fair.
That Carter Hart doesn't play.
I more meant that Carter Hart doesn't play.
Well, no. I'm saying I think in an ideal situation, Tortorella might play Carter Hart in those games. The problem is they played against Florida on the back end of a back-to-back after getting outshot 38-24. And now you're not playing Carter Hart, even if you wanted to. They lose to the Rangers in overtime. Carter Hart had to make 35 saves before giving up the only goal of the game. He's not playing against Toronto the next night, even if you wanted him to. They had played San Jose had come after a game against Nashville. That might have been the lightest workload, but he made a lot of skill saves in the 32 saves or 32 shots faced, and he gave up one goal, so 31 saves. So he wasn't getting that one either. I know that Sandstrom has given up 4 goals against Florida, then 2 against San Jose, 1 was an empty netter, and 5 against Toronto. Like, I know that sounds bad because it's 10 goals in 3 games. it's the level of goaltending behind this level of defense at the moment. That's what it is.
And it is also worth noting, and this was mentioned on the Steve Dangle podcast as well, Felix Sandstrom wasn't really intended to be the backup this season. Like, it probably should have been Ivan Fedotov, and the whole Russia thing happened, and so who knows?
Okay, and here's the thing. So here's the thing, because we were just to kind of tie it together, because this is still about Carter Hart, but
and I do want to read off Carter Hart's numbers in a second.
Sure, because what it comes down to is this. Because you mentioned the thing about their 6-3, like they're 6-3-2. It's all because of Carter Hart. Who's to say that they couldn't just ride him through the season? Here's 2 reasons why. Number one, this level of play is not sustainable. This is a team that went 4-1-1 through 6 games, 6-2-2 through 10, 8-4-2 through 14 last year, literally a year ago,
and then ended up just being absolute utter garbage.
And literally the very first game after they were 8-4-2 through 14, game number 15, they had an incredible rally because they gave up a goal to Tampa Bay with 2 minutes left, still scored a goal with 9 seconds left to get it to overtime to get a point out of the game, which against Tampa Bay at the time, you were sitting there going, impressive. That's great. Hey, okay, it's 8-4-3 in 15. That's fine. Who cares? That little did everybody know that was the start of a 10-game losing streak where in the middle of it, you'd fire the coach. Yep. That's number one. There was
first 10-game losing streak of the season.
Right. There was another 10-game losing streak, which really became 13.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's sitting here saying we're out of the woods.
Right. All I'm trying to say is just because for the people who are going to freak out about they're out of the Bedard sweepstakes,
no,
15,
they're not.
11 games in.
Right.
No, they're not. Because and one of the things I want to point out about that is, okay, so the Flyers are tied for 10th in points with 14, along with like 7 other teams, by the way.
Right.
Okay, the difference between being the best team in the league is 8 points, which also happens to be the difference between being the worst team in the league.
Yep.
That's 4 games.
Yep.
And do you think, like, if you look at the bottom, okay, who were the teams that we said were going to be there? If we're talking about the Flyers, who else did we say were going to be there?
Ottawa.
No, I thought
that's fair. We had Ottawa a little higher. You're right. We expected Seattle to be there. They've been outplaying that. We expect
Seattle's
Buffalo.
really been outplaying that.
We expect Buffalo to be there.
Really outplaying
they've been outplaying it. Arizona has been they are what we thought they were.
Yeah, but they're not the worst.
No.
So Arizona's at least winning. Like, Arizona's got 4 wins on the year, too. Like, 4 wins is only 2 fewer than the Flyers have.
That's what I'm saying.
And in the same number of games, so I'm not really worried about that. Like, it's the same difference. But, okay, who was the team that everybody wanted the Flyers to be? And it's not Arizona.
I was going to say, I wanted them to be Arizona.
No, Chicago. The team that looked like they were,
That's
like
fair.
the team that when you looked at the roster, you went, well, they traded away all their good players. So they're deliberately doing it. This is what the Flyers have been. Chicago's 5-5-2 with 12 points in 12.
Yeah.
So are they doing it right? No. Guess what? There's no difference between whether or not, like, what the Flyers are doing.
What changed last year when that 10-game losing streak started? The goaltending fell apart. Like, Carter Hart was playing well, and then that stopped.
And that's my second counterpoint.
Right.
Which is they might be winning games and Carter Hart might be playing outstanding. That's actually not the part that I don't think is sustainable. I think Carter Hart and his numbers can be. Do you want to know what I don't think? No, do you want to know what I don't think is?
Him having to make 40 saves a game?
Nope. I think that the issue is at some point in time, you're asking him to make saves that are ridiculous right now. Yep. And at some point in time, he'll tweak something. He'll be down for 2 weeks. And you're going to get Felix Sandstrom and Sam Eric.
He'll come back before he's healthy, and then he'll be playing hurt all year. I know we've seen this song and dance before. Welcome to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Right, and I'm not trying to be doom and gloom about it, but I'm saying is that if you're on the bandwagon of they should be losing, they should be going after one of these prospects, give it time. I mean,
there's definitely still time, but in the meantime.
Don't get me wrong. I understand the other side of the argument, which is you're 11 games in, and at this stage of the game, because we are now into November officially, you are going to get through 2 more games this week, which, by the way, are 2 very winnable games this week against the 2 worst teams in the league. I mean, let's put it this way. Well, the whole week actually leading up to this point, like leading up to next Sunday, is the 3 worst teams in the league by points. It actually is. Right. So all 3 of them technically winnable and puts you
0 out of 6 points.
But that puts you less than 2 weeks out from Thanksgiving, which is that marker.
Yep.
So Is it possible that they win another 2 out of 3 this week?
Sure.
And keep the pace that they're on going and are still in the top 3 or 4 in the Metro, and you're within 2 weeks of getting to Thanksgiving? It's possible.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, so we've gotten
Go ahead and get the Carter Hart's numbers.
Right. We've gotten a good sample size out of Carter Hart so far. He's played in 8 games.
What, 8 out of 11? Yeah.
Right. He is 6-0-2, which is impressive when you talk about the fact that the team is 6-3-2. His goals against right now is 1.97. And his save percentage is .946. He has a 946.
Okay, so do we need to do context at this point?
That is literally obscene.
Okay, so do we need to do context?
I'm pulling up the whole league.
Yeah, that's what I have in front of me if you want me to do this.
Goals against average, he's 4th in the league.
Okay, that's not completely true.
I know, because it's...
No. Here's why. No. Cam Talbot's the one who doesn't belong out of that group because Cam Talbot's literal first start with Ottawa came last night.
I know. We're in small sample size.
The other 2 guys on the list are legitimately better through about the same number of games. We said this was his
Jake Ottinger's ridiculous. Yeah.
Ottinger's played 7 and Ville Husso's played 7.
Right.
Husso's at least active. Ottinger right now is down with an injury, unfortunately for Dallas. Now they're winning games regardless without him, but
yeah.
But Ottinger kept what he had in the playoffs last year and kept it going, which I'm not surprised by. He is that good of a goaltender. But Carter Hart is right up there with, I mean, if you look at the other goalies who you would be able to compare that we like beyond, I'm not just going with names you'd recognize, but like you're trying to find the other goalies who are playing regularly because no offense, but Magnus Hellberg being
one
on there
game.
also
Yeah,
it's the same difference. It's like, it's a guy who barely plays. Logan Thompson would qualify.
He has been incredible so far, and that is
Connor Hellebuck would
somehow
qualify.
Vegas finds money. Yep.
Hate to say it, but funny enough, Stuart Skinner qualifies. He's played 5 games.
Yep.
Edmonton's going with Skinner in a bit of regularity. Sorokin's played a lot.
Stuart Skinner's a solid goalie.
Linus Ullmark is probably the first name I come to, though, where I really start to measure something because Linus Ullmark has 8 wins to lead the league.
For the best team in hockey so far. Like, up until,
literally up until, I think, last night because they lost to Toronto and Vegas won.
Right. Boston has been phenomenal this year. They are blowing it all out, taking one more run.
Isn't it funny that the 2 teams at the top of the standings in the league basically not traded coaches, but one is the former Bruins coach and one is the new Bruins coach?
It is pretty funny.
Like, Vegas makes a coaching change. Bruce Cassidy, as we expected, fits in pretty well out there. They're doing fine, obviously.
It turns out
fine's an understatement.
Healthy Jack Eichel is a good hockey player.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Right? Okay.
But Jim Montgomery's doing a hell of a job in Boston. I mean, you got to give credit where it's due.
And they are absolutely getting the band back together. Like, they have Krejci, Bergeron's back. Have you looked at their cap friendly? Half the team expires this year. Like, they are all in.
But it's working.
Oh, yeah. And you have to. And we're going to see similar stuff out of, like, the Penguins over the next couple of years. We've already kind of seen it with them. But, when you have this core, you got to just be going for it every year.
So there's 2 things that I'm looking for when I look at the rest of the list beyond what we just said about Carter Hart. One is, like, the goalie for the best team in the league, which I just found, like, both of them. Logan Thompson's got a 201, which makes a lot of sense. But Thompson's not playing, like, for the amount of wins that Vegas has, Thompson's not playing every game.
Right.
You can tell. If he's only got 6 wins at most, then he's not playing every game.
Right. Well, and he's young and they're being careful.
I hear you. So. Ullmark has played like one 8 games and has a 216.
I think Swayman's been hurt, so.
Yeah. Swayman just got hurt, though.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Like, he got hurt this week. So they have been splitting.
It's been on Ullmark.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're talking goals against. In save percentage, Carter Hart's 3rd in the league, and with Cam Talbot only having 1 start, I mean, come on.
Right, so here's where I'm going with this. So the other guy who I look for, though, when I look at this list is not just the goalies of the best teams. How about the most recent Vezina winner? How's he doing? Because he's off to a pretty solid start, too, right? He's off to a decent start. Igor Shesterkin's goals against is 241.
Yep. And he's got a 916 save. Yeah, I mean,
which by all standards are elite level numbers.
But for him, they're medium to poor, which is crazy.
But I'm saying, but
just
Carter
how
Hart
good he
is putting up a 197 goals against and a 946 save percentage. and doesn't have any more wins than some of the other guys. Like he has the same number. Look at this list of the guys he has. Listen to the list of the same number guys who have the same number of wins that Carter Hart does at 6. Igor Shesterkin does, which shouldn't come as a surprise.
Right.
Connor Hellebuck, again, not really a surprise. Logan Thompson with 6 for Vegas, not really a surprise.
Actually, it's a little bit of a surprise that Winnipeg already has six wins, to be honest.
That was Vegas. Winnipeg has 6 with Connor Hellebuck.
No, I know. I was talking about Hellebuck.
I hear you. But Hellebuck's good enough that he can win games on his own, I think, is what I'm getting at. I don't think of Logan Thompson and say, oh, that guy's going to have 6 wins unless his team's really good, I guess.
No, Connor Hellebuck is in a much more similar position to Carter Hart.
Right. Ilya Samsonov has 6 for Toronto.
And he's been fantastic for them.
Okay. With Alexander Georgiev has 6 for Colorado, which I think, first of all, there's an irony that the former backup to Igor
Thank God he's not still a Ranger. Yeah.
But, it's funny.
I couldn't handle them having that duo.
And do you need me to tell you who the only other goalie on that list with 6 is?
Okay.
It's Martin Jones.
Flyers legend.
So tell me there's not some irony to Shesterkin and his former backup, have the same number of wins.
And then Carter Hart and his former backup
have the same number of wins. And then Olmark's up there with 8, obviously. And then you start to get into the territory of other guys who have 5 wins, which is the likes of Marc-Andre Fleury, Jack Campbell, Freddie Anderson, Ottinger and Husso both have 5.
Something else I wanted to mention about Hart here real quick is the fact that he is still just 24. I know he had a bad year last year. I know he wasn't great the year before that. I know he's had a rough couple seasons here, but the team's been awful in front of him. He's still 24. Most goalies still haven't even debuted in the NHL by now.
Is Ottinger the other, exception to this rule, kind of?
Yes.
There's other guys, Logan Thompson's 25, so that's still very young, obviously, but, Ville Husso, who's got the same level of numbers, is 27.
Well, right, and even
just now, everybody finds out who the hell he is, right?
Even Ottinger just came up last year,
he's 23.
And kind of made his debut. He was only a year younger than Hart. Carter Hart's been up for 4 years at this point.
This honestly, though, as I'm looking through the list of guys, the guys with the top goals against right now,
Logan Thompson's 25.
This is an exciting time for goalies. Let me tell you, Ottinger's 23, Husso's 27, Hart 24,
Skinner's 24.
Hellebuck's only 29, actually. It doesn't feel like it because it feels like he's been around forever, but he's 29. Sorokin's 27.
I can't believe Sorokin's already 27. But
Olmark's 29 and just finally coming into his zone.
Samsonov's only 25.
Samsonov's 25. Wow. Shesterkin's still 26.
Right. Ilya Samsonov was a Capital for 4 years and is still only 25.
Imagine when you get to the point where you're talking about goalies if the the goalies who are getting the bulk of the starts in certain situations like in Florida. Bobrovsky's still the number 1, but Spencer Knight is right there, and Spencer Knight's got a 253 in his whatever number of games, 4 games. His save percentage is not really good. His save percentage is .899. That's not good. But he's 21.
Yep.
The next ones are on the way. The guys you almost expect to be hearing more about in this grouping is okay, Freddie Anderson's 33. Okay, I get that, know?
Yeah, that last big batch.
Darcy Kemper's 32. Craig Anderson's got a 225 and he's 40.
Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen a pretty hefty changing of the guard. You had Pekka Rinne retire. You had Henrik Lundqvist retire. You had Tuukka Rask retire. Braden Holtby might still be clinging on somewhere, but he's on his way out. There's a big changing of the guard. The goaltending class just got about 10 years younger over the last couple of years, and it's exciting to see.
Do you know which name? Do you know which name we haven't mentioned?
Okay.
In this whole conversation about goaltending numbers, you have to go past the top 25 to find him.
Okay.
Andrei Vasilevsky.
Yeah, I traded for him in fantasy this year, so of course he's starting out medium.
That's a great way to put it, though, because
I didn't keep Carter Hart because I traded for Andrei Vasilevsky. It's going great.
Yeah, because you're right. These aren't bad numbers.
No,
a 287 goals against and a 911 save percentage is exactly you know what that is. That's exactly where Carter Hart was living a couple years ago.
Yep.
Looking okay. You knew something wasn't completely right with him. He's getting scored on a little more than you would like, but he's not the one who's killing you.
Right. And as we're getting towards, that quarter way mark of the season, we're not there yet. We're just past kind of the 10% mark. But as we start getting closer to that quarter mark, you're going to start to see these numbers matter. Like,
sure. But it's very interesting because like another guy who's not off to the best start, who was a Vezina candidate last year, Jacob Markstrom's got a 284 goals against and a 900 save percentage. That's kind of pedestrian compared to some of these other numbers you're seeing. Or how about
Calgary's got some stuff they're figuring out.
Or how about a guy like UC Saros, who was in the Vezina conversation for the last several years with a 312 and a 904 save percentage? Like, that's average.
Well, we talk about Carter Hart's performance being unsustainable. Like those performances are unsustainable in the fact that you know they're going to turn it around.
The only guy who I would sit there and say the answer to that is I don't know is Saros, because I kind of don't know what Nashville is anymore.
That's valid, and I think Nashville doesn't necessarily know what they are.
Like I think Calgary's record is what it is when Markstrom's not giving them near perfection like he was. I think that Tampa was at one point in time 1-3-0 in their first 4 games. Now they've played 12 games and are 7-4-1. Like they've improved.
Exactly.
Like I think that you can pinpoint that, like a team that's 6-1-1 in their last, or 6-0-1 in their last, or no, I had it right, 6-1-1. Sorry, I was looking at Winnipeg's record, which is 7-3-1.
Okay.
But like a team that's got 6 wins in their last 8 games is trending in the right direction. Right. I do think that Vasilevsky's numbers are going to suffer this year in terms of mileage. Okay. Like, you've played a lot. You can't deny you've played a lot. I think mileage catches up to a goaltender.
Brian Elliott might get a lot of starts this year.
I mean, Brian Elliott's no spring chicken anymore either.
No, I know. Well, right, but you don't care about how many miles you're putting on Brian Elliott. You're gonna load manage Vasilevsky to make sure he's in the best shape possible for the playoffs.
Right, but so there's the difference though. There's a difference between he's 28 years old. It feels like he's 32 because when you've played the duration of the seasons that you have, like when you're playing 20 extra games a year in the playoffs and he gets all of them, and especially the first year that they won, like
every series went to 7, didn't it? It was like 7,
that
6,
wasn't
7,
even,
7. Or
that's not even the reason that I'm thinking that, because the reason being that when, like, okay, I keep forgetting they don't count they're not counting those as playoff games, but he had to play 3 other games, like, so right? He played 3 other games.
Andre Vasilevsky, he's played 373 career regular season games.
Right.
He's played 104 postseason games.
Isn't that nuts?
He's 28 years old and has an extra 100 games on his record. He's played almost 500 games already, and as a goalie, that's obscene.
In the playoffs, by the way, like the last 3 years, this is the if you're looking for amount of work, like his numbers are outstanding in the playoffs, obviously, but the last 3 years, 740, 699, and 752 shots against. Yep.
By the way, his career record in the playoffs, this is ridiculous. 63-38.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Insane.
I think the goals against the last 2 years or the first 2 years that they won the cup in the playoffs is absurd also. 190 both years. His save percentage those years was 927 and 937. Like that's
he's gonna hit 250 career wins this year. He's got 233 right now. He'll get to 250.
Yeah, he will.
Insane.
That's incredible.
Okay, anyway, back to Carter Hart. We have seen in the past goalies have a spectacular season and maintain it through the whole season, right? We've seen guys like Martin Brodeur do it. We've seen guys like Henrik Lundqvist. How many times did Henrik Lundqvist single-handedly drag the Rangers to the playoffs? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Carter Hart does that, and I think he's capable of that.
I think at this point, sure. I
think the Flyers have a shot. I think if there is any sort of dip, I think that makes it tough. Because I don't think Felix Sandstrom has played that poorly, but I think the team in front of them has looked pretty similar. Sure. Carter Hart is good enough to make the difference.
Yes, he is.
And Felix Sandstrom just isn't.
There's a couple things that are going to come into play for me. Not about Carter Hart specifically here, but there's because we keep talking about Sandstrom too. At some point in time, I envision if he doesn't pull out a win at some point soon, that they go to Sam Ersson instead.
I think you got to give him a shot.
Right, just to try to give somebody a shot. I don't know if
Sandstrom doesn't need waivers, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, not at this stage. But But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to consider, and like with guys on the team who may, like a week ago when we're watching the game against Carolina, and Morgan Frost is getting 5 minutes a game. We're sitting there going, how long until he's on waivers? Like, seriously.
Yep.
And he does need them. Right. And how long until this happens? Because Tortorella is not warming up to this kid. No. It feels like. Now, credit to Tortorella in this case because he credited Frost's line with really establishing a forecheck in the game against Ottawa. And he didn't hold back on the fact that he's like, if you're going to praise like Frost and Lazinski and guys like that, then that's good because it says that they're doing something without scoring goals that stands out to you and makes you say that I'm not going to bench. Like Frost was benched recently enough. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it says something to, okay, this was good. This was progress. I don't know if what Carter Hart's doing is sustainable.
Nobody does.
It could be. I think there's an irony to the fact that everything about John Tortorella's coaching style and everything about his teams is like every team he has a goaltender. Yep. Every team he has a really good goaltender that he leans on, and he's able to do it right now. Does that happen for the whole year? Does it happen through Thanksgiving? Does it happen through Christmas? Who the hell knows? But for right now, you can't deny what kind of year he's having through 8 games and
spectacular.
Like, okay, what game, whatever game it was, I guess it would have been the Florida game because he won the game. At that point, he was 5-0, hadn't lost a game yet, gave up 3 goals for the first time all season, and we were waiting to get into the locker room laughing because at the fact that his save percentage dropped by like 2 points.
I know. Like, ridiculous.
Isn't that funny? He gave up 3 goals for the first time in the entire season. His save percentage dropped by 2 points.
Yep.
Like, okay. No big deal. Like, it didn't even, like, initially, it didn't even really register with me last night when they beat Ottawa 2-1 that you're like, oh, yeah, by the way, he just makes another 33 saves and out of 34 and gave up just 1 goal. So the goals against is going to dip.
If you want this team to be bad, if you want this team to tank, you have to be in favor of trading him. It's that simple. He's going to steal you too many points. And if he steals you enough points to get you in the playoffs, fine. Fine. Because at that point, whatever. Why not?
You got something to play for, I guess.
Sure. And like, Nick Delorier is going to run hog wild in the playoffs. But if he doesn't, like, my biggest fear as a lifelong Flyers fan, I've seen it far too much. Carter Hart is going to win you just enough points to finish 9th in the conference. And you're going to end up with a garbage draft pick, and you're not going to make the playoffs, and we're just medium again. Like, how do you feel about picking 15th every year?
All right, here's something I'll bring up then that maybe you'll change your mind about this for a second. Okay, and I'm not trying to discount what Carter Hart has done so far. This is not to discount Carter Hart.
Sure.
Who have the Flyers beaten so far?
You beat Tampa. You beat Florida, who's been rough to start the season. You beat the Devils, Vancouver.
Okay, so let's try
some pretty medium teams.
But let's do this in a different way. They beat the Devils first.
Right.
The Devils are the 3rd best team in the league today, but that was the very first game.
They were not good in that game.
Happen, and they didn't play well. Right. End of story. You beat Vancouver. Vancouver is 27th in the league.
Awful.
Okay. You beat Tampa at the time, who came out of the gate kind of struggling. Like now they're 8th in the league.
Sure.
But at the time, you had them vulnerable. You lost to Florida first, then eventually beat Florida. So,
you did have that win against Nashville in there, too.
I know. I'm getting to them in a second. But
okay.
Florida's 18th in the league right now. So, okay, they've taken a dip. Nashville, 24th in the league.
I also think Florida is one of those teams that had a bit of a slow start, but will end up being a solid team.
Okay, and now so I got to 5, right? So your 6th was Ottawa, who is 30th in the league. Let's talk again, and look, because you're going to play. This is what I'm getting at. You're going to play St. Louis next, who's 31. You're going to play Columbus after that, 32, and then play Ottawa again, who's 30.
Yep. And then you play Dallas, and then you go right back to Columbus and play Columbus again.
I hear you about the go back right back to Columbus thing, but you play Dallas, who's 5th, and you got Boston coming up, who's 2nd.
Yep.
Let's see what happens when they play a team who's been good the whole year. Not Tampa, who's out. Not Tampa, who was off to a tough start. Not New Jersey, who had one game. You know, it was the first game. You didn't even know what to expect. Okay, fine.
But what are the other two games that Carter Hart has played? The overtime loss
Rangers
to Carolina, and the overtime
Carolina.
loss to the Rangers.
So, okay, but Carolina came back around and they lost to a team that was better than they are.
Fine.
And the Rangers...
Carter Hart single-handedly got you a point against the Rangers.
Oh, for sure. Well, listen, this is the crazy thing about standings, right? Today, you're waking up and they are 4 points behind the first place New Jersey Devils. That sounds weird to say, by the way.
Yeah, right.
So the Devils have 18 points. The Flyers have 14. The difference between the Flyers being tied for second place is 2 minutes.
Yep.
Because it is literally on a game against Carolina where they were 2 minutes away from a regulation 3-2 win, and instead it went to overtime and they lost in overtime. Yep. That is the difference between the Flyers have 15 points and so do the Carolina Hurricanes. Actually, better yet, you would be able to swap. Carolina would lose a win, get a regulation loss. Flyers would lose an overtime loss and get a win. They would have the exact same record, 7-3-1. That is the difference, 2 minutes.
And everyone looks at Carolina and says, oh, that's a team that's going to the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. But this is the thing about playoff teams, right? The Flyers are third in the division today. And Buffalo's in a playoff spot. And the Islanders are in a playoff spot. Not everybody had those teams making it. New Jersey's leading the division. Not everybody had them there. Go to the other side. Seattle's second in their division. Chicago's in a playoff spot. Who had them there?
Nobody.
A lot of people didn't think Winnipeg was going to be good. Winnipeg's second in the division.
It's been a very strange season so far.
And the teams that are out of the playoffs right now that everybody kind of thought, well, yeah, sure, they'll probably make it. St. Louis, Calgary. Go to the other side. A lot of people, well, the Rangers are currently, both Toronto and the Rangers are technically out of a playoff spot today. I know it's on a technicality, but they're out of a playoff spot today. Florida, out of a playoff spot. Pittsburgh, Washington, Ottawa, who everybody was high on. Columbus, who got the forward everybody wanted in free agency, has 3 wins. Yep.
Yeah, I expect things to be different by our next show just because we're still early enough in the season that things change every other day. And like we were talking about earlier, it's 4 games to the top of the league or 4 games to the bottom of the league.
I just can't get so hopped up on they've won 6 out of 11 games. They're at 14 points. They're throwing away the opportunity for this guy or that guy. I don't think that's the case because I've seen I'm sorry, they got off to what was even the year before, last year. I can remember the records vividly: 6-2-2, 8-4-2. That was the records between 10 games and 14 games.
The year before that was the 56 game.
Which is different, but at the same time, they were affected by 20,000 different things, this, that, the other thing, and they went and they were going to play super short-handed. What was the record after right before the COVID hit, surge hit them? Their record at that time, was 8-3-2. There's something about they start off the first 14 games or so playing really well the last 2 years, and then it goes off the cliff. Does this go off the cliff too?
I think that's going to come down to whether John Tortorella has fixed the culture or not.
It probably does, but that's why, can you understand why, so far, I know you do, I'm talking about everybody else out there. Can you understand why I'm not going crazy over 6 wins in 11 games when we've seen this act the last 2 years? Hey, and think about the trajectory of the way 2020 ends. They look like the hottest team in the league. Everything stops. They come into the playoffs. They win the preseason game, the first 3 games after, win game 1 against Montreal. It's all looking great. They win a playoff series. Then it ends. Okay, 7-game series against upstart team like the Islanders. They were, coming forward.
The Islanders were great that year.
Yeah. They had a great, they were really good. Exactly. And that ends, and they start the next season off when everything comes back in January, and they go out and they start with, and the conversations were exactly the same. Yep. 8-3-2 to start 2021, and everybody would watch and go, well, what they're doing isn't sustainable, but they're winning. How can you deny it? And the thing is that
but then every year the team proved to us that we were correct and that it wasn't sustainable.
Not necessarily proved correct. The first year, everybody was kind of shocked by it, I think, because 8-3-2 was, this isn't sustainable, but the team was really good last year, so I'm sure it's going to come around at some point.
Right.
And it never did. It fell off a cliff. So then the next year, there was skepticism, but it was okay. They're 8-4-2. Surely it's not sustainable, but they're winning games. I can't deny that. And then it fell off a cliff. And this year, everybody thought they were going to be terrible, and now they are 6-3-2. Yeah. And it's like imagine if they win these next two games and get to that 8-3-2 mark again, or close enough to.
So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. From an on-ice momentum standpoint,
right?
I don't know if any franchise in the league got hit as hard as the Flyers did by COVID. Going back to that, like the 2020 original stoppage. And again, strictly from an on-ice perspective, I'm not talking about Marco Rossi missing a whole year. I'm not talking about people getting sick. That all happened to everybody, and I understand that. But the Flyers were the best team in the league hitting that break. We were like 4 weeks out from the playoffs, and that team was clicking and red hot.
So to bring, funny enough, to bring it back to where we started in a way, if we started with 20 minutes of baseball.
Yep.
And the run that this team was just on that just came up a couple games short. Was that a possibility without this, right? Like, if the world doesn't stop in March of 2020 and the team's playing at that kind of level, challenging for the division, everything is going so sky high beyond expectations. Or what if they win that game 7 and get Tampa? And again, no one's going to give you a shot against a team like Tampa, but maybe they have something, right? Who knows? Like
Hart was playing fantastic hockey in that bubble.
Sure. And
he could have stolen you.
What I'm trying to get at from that is that, look, there's a lot of reasons why it's not sustainable. I'm not trying to bring people down with this. Let's put it this way. People were having this conversation at 4-2-0. If we would have done a show the day after you were at the game, we would have had the same conversation. Yep. Is this for real? Carter Hart's 4-0, playing out of his mind, brilliant. The conversation hasn't changed with double the amount of games that have been played since that point.
So why isn't it sustainable over
Carter Hart? So there's really no rhyme or reason to anything. It's just weird. Sports are weird sometimes. Like Absolutely. I think we've established this. Weird things happen. I don't know where it's going to go. I can't wait to check in. I think we're going to be on the 2-week thing again for a little bit because next weekend I am. So, by the way, I think we should mention with the Ottawa game being last night.
Yeah.
The return, not the return, but the return of Claude Giroux is upon us pretty much.
Yeah. That was his first former game against the organization.
He played his former team for the first time. Now the return to Philadelphia is upon us. I do think
how much did you win on betting Giroux anytime goal scorer? Because that was a lock. Come on.
I didn't think about it like that, to be honest. It only took 2 minutes and 44 seconds, which shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean,
I'm willing to bet somewhere in the Delaware Valley, somebody put down $100 on Giroux first goal scorer, and they had a good night.
I don't know if I would have gone first if I was doing that type of stuff because,
even anytime probably paid you pretty well.
Well, right, because I'm I would think anytime would be a better bet because of the fact that first really sets the tone.
And what does Claude Giroux love more than setting a tone?
Yeah, but see, I almost feel like it's set up for if they would have gone to overtime, he would have been out there.
The game winner.
Yeah, depends. Okay, so depending on what betting service you would use, you could always bet last goal, and that might have been a fun bet. He's going to score the game winner, or he'll have an empty netter at the end or something, right? Yeah.
It was guaranteed that Claude Giroux was doing something.
So
in that game.
A little piece of history from that goal, by the way, because first of all, now he has officially scored against every team in the league.
Okay, I'm not surprised, but
but it also was his 300th career goal.
I did know that. Yeah,
which is
you know what? Congratulations, Claude.
Congratulations is right.
We've never, there was a little bit of ill will when he decided to. Well, I'm only going to Florida, but other than that, I mean.
There is a level of irony. There is a level of irony to me that he got to play against Florida as a former teammate before he got to play against Philly as a former teammate. That
is funny.
They had a freaking tribute for him and stuff like that.
Did they really?
I think they did. I saw something about a thank you to him. They
it was probably just a thank you. I doubt he got a package.
Still there was a post about a thank you.
By the way, I have talked about this San Jose game a couple times. I did want to mention there was a very nice video package because it was the return of Oscar Lindblom to Philadelphia.
Yes,
So
it was.
It was beautiful. Anyway, when Claude Giroux returns to Philadelphia next Saturday, it will be tenfold. Okay, if he doesn't cry, I'm gonna get mad.
All right, so here's the deal for this, by the way, because I've already seen this. First of all, I will not be at that game. Okay. I know it sounds nuts. I'm in a wedding that day. I will not be at that game. To be honest, that one I will not even really be watching because.
Okay.
Look,
it's a mid-afternoon game.
Well, it is, but the wedding in California catered to 4:00 start East Coast. Works for me. 1:00 West Coast. I'll be done by the time the wedding starts. This wedding starts at 3:30 in the afternoon, and being that I am not just like only a guest, I'm in the wedding. My day starts at noon.
Yeah, fair enough.
So 1:00 in the afternoon is going to result in.
I can't wait to see the pictures from that wedding where you're just kind of watching on your phone.
Listen, there's at least one buddy of mine who's in it with me who will definitely find a way to keep track. But being there was going to be something special, obviously.
Yeah.
They have already told people
get there early
because they're doing it all pregame.
Okay. Like probably a great decision.
Like with all due respect to anybody else like Oscar Lindblom or anybody else who comes along.
You weren't the captain of this team for almost a decade.
The guy who played 1,000 games on the dot with this team is getting a pregame welcome back.
The best player in franchise history. I said it.
I can't go there. We did the bracket way back when. I know who the best players in franchise history are.
I know.
There's two. I think Drew is definitely top 5. You can make an argument for top 3 potentially because he played here longer. I don't know if he has quite the performance chop that Lindros
the hardware, right?
Well, even the statistical numbers. Lindros was more of a goal scorer than Giroux was.
That's fair.
But beyond that point, so unfortunately, I am missing the big tribute thing and things like that. But there's an element of this that was surprising that he came out and really set the tone early. Like he scores a goal, former team, like everybody knew it was a big deal. And then that team, Carter Hart was a big part of it. Don't get me wrong, but that team couldn't figure anything out for the rest of the game.
No,
it's interesting how that was it. Like the big moment for them came 2 minutes in, and then 2-3 minutes in, and then. The Flyers get one on a power play, and they get, which I think was literally the first shot of the game. And, Zach McEwen, Snipe City, top corner.
I made a joke about it earlier in the show, but it was pretty.
By the way, the Flyers tweet last night was perfection off of that goal.
Okay, I didn't say it.
Big Mac with top cheese.
Oh, that's a great note to get out of here. That is... Pardon the pun, that is too cheesy for me.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we are going to get out of here. Real quick, I did also want to mention the last little slide that we have here is that Sean Couturier had another back surgery and will be missing a very significant portion of time.
At least 3 to 4 months.
Very possibly the season.
Which to put a bow on everything, because when there was a little bit of a period of time where the talk was maybe 3 to 4 weeks and it'll be okay, right? No. This is exactly what I kind of speculated against, which was how do we know that in another 2 or 3 weeks he'll be trying something and they'll sit there and say, you know what, the only answer is surgery. And he's out for half the year.
For the record, I don't really trust the Philadelphia Flyers medical staff at this point. We've documented those issues on the show.
No, you know who people trust more than that? The guy who's been on top of all of these more than anybody, who's known about every significant injury that's happened.
Okay.
And San Philly.
Yep. I trust WebMD more than I trust the Flyers doctor.
Well, and for medical advice, I hear you there.
And WebMD tells you everything's going to kill you.
But Anthony Sanfilippo, again, could miss significant time.
Fantastic
and they tried to
on Twitter.
And they tried to downplay it and do it. Yep. Oh, this could be lower, timeline, 3 to 4 weeks. He might be able to come back. He got on the ice and tried to skate. And as soon as he was off the ice, you knew something was wrong.
Yep.
And now it's 3 to 4 months.
And Sanfilly is the second best follow on Flyers Twitter, behind only at Kevin_Durso.
No, he knows so much, and you got to give credit where it's due. He had that one from a mile away, and as soon as you saw that he wasn't skating anymore, and there was talks about a setback, to come back with surgery. No warning. It was just out there. 3 to 4 months surgery. Boom, done.
Well, the nice thing is, if this team does manage to keep themselves floating around any sort of playoff contention, Sean Couturier will be a great trade deadline ad.
Sure.
Basically, he's not. I mean, they're not officially, but
March-ish is about when you can think about this. Probably, yeah, that's fair.
If you're in that, so if you're in the position to make a run, Sean Couturier comes back and helps your team as your number one center. If you're not in a position to make a run, he shouldn't play.
I would fully expect it, to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pleasantly surprised at how Joel Farabee's held up. And
knock on wood, it's early. They haven't ruined him yet.
I know, but he's taken some hits where you go, ooh, that doesn't
and coming off the neck surgery.
Right. Specifically for him, you're like, oh no. And he pops right back up and he seems fine. So I'll give him that. And, certainly they've had, we already know about the Ryan Ellis thing. That's not a mystery anymore. Maybe, the biggest mystery at this point, and I kind of had to answer this question for somebody on Twitter the other day, is Cam Atkinson is still kind of a floating timeline, and
day to day, week to week.
Well, I kind of tried to bury that one a little bit, not in the sense that basically kind of in a way where it's stop asking,
right?
Because they've kind of hinted week to week, stop asking. It's going to be a while.
Yep.
End of story. So the group you see is the group you get, and they've won 6 games out of 11 so far. We'll see what happens in the next couple weeks and what we have to talk about.
And we have 2 big weeks to talk about, like we said earlier, a week where they play all the worst teams and then a week where they play a bunch of the good teams. So
yeah, kind of right in the middle.
In 2 weeks, we will have a much better picture of who this team is. So until then, for all your news here, follow at Kevin_Durso. Follow the podcast at YWT Podcast. Follow us everywhere. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It has been forever since I've said something about that, but make sure to subscribe over there.
It was forever since we did a show.
Right. Make sure to follow at Sports Talk Philly as well, at Sports Talk PHL. Other than that, we've had a lot of hockey to talk about. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a lot more. Like I said, I think we'll know a lot more about where the team is in a couple of weeks. So until then, I think it was a pretty good one. It was a long one, but
it had to be. We've been away for a little while.
Too much to get to. So 2 weeks from now, we'll see you.